Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 15.7 retro for the almost want to say compliance, the product analytics front-end team. Yeah, we have a few agenda items, so I'll kick us off and quickly just look at the milestone board. The two main things that we had to do from the front-end side was the onboarding app, and then also the charts. So the good news is that we've made, I feel like, good progress there. On the chart side or the visualizations, we have the line chart, the table, and the single stat. Thanks for all your help and contributions there, especially Axel for helping out on the single stat one. And yeah, they're all merged. So those are like the three main visualizations that we need to start building dashboards. So now everyone's very excited about that. Then also, Rob, congratulations for getting the onboarding app merged. I know that was a giant one. I'm sure it caused many a headache.
It was just getting the reviews, honestly. It's just, all over a week to get a feature spec reviewed, all told.
Do you feel like there's anything that we could follow up on to make that process better, or was this like an individual one-off case?
No, it's you have to. Our SLA is 48 hours after the request is made, and you've got to give everyone's in different time zones, so you've got to give everyone that time that they need. And it's just unfortunate that when a reviewer is non-responsive in that time period, you have to you can't proactively just swap. You have to give them an opportunity. And then when you actually do get a reviewer that starts to respond, you've then obviously again you've got that reviews round trips that take place. That's all.
Yes.
Right. And then Rob, you have the next few points as well.
Yep. So sharing what I've done, we got the onboarding designs all tidied up and the issues were all set and ready to go. That was the beginning of the milestone. And I also had some time fixing the kube proxy, which didn't work for some people. Jan's line chart, Tim's query designer, name to be determined at this point. And we also, in one of the MRs, Jan raised a valid point around getting a more specific error in place for when we have no table or database returned from Cube, because it's not yet generated on the onboarding process. So adding a new 404 specific message for that scenario, so we can differentiate between known expected errors and unknown unexpected errors.
Very nice.
Then Axel, I think you've got your next point.
Yes, let me vocalize that. So yeah, this is a bit from the previous milestone, but we got nicer docs, and we also have a couple of. I wanted to mention it because we have this follow-up about that I didn't link it on the agenda, but we have this follow-up about adding information about our stack into the docs, and this was one of Gian's suggestions, and I do believe this is valuable. So I'm going to try to push that forward in this next milestone.
Awesome. Yeah, I think as we move towards the customer preview, the importance of that is going to raise. Right now, it's not like our priority number one, but the more eyes we get on this, I guess the better it is for us to explain, the context around what it is that we use and why certain things need to be said.
Yeah, totally. Because one of the questions we got a lot when we started working on this was, what is product analytics and what are we doing here and what is your vision and all the stuff, and having the stack description is a good way to move that conversation forward as well.
And speaking of things that will likely slip, Rob, you have a point there.
Yeah, because of the delays with the onboarding Vue app, and it got split into two separate issues after reaching over 1,000 lines worth of code. Thank you, feature specs and fixtures. The onboarding issues are only now realistically able to be developed, and we've got a week left in the milestone, because we're doing this a bit early because next week I'm not here at least. So next milestone, having a look at the 15.8 milestone planning, the number one item for us is the onboarding flow, getting that finished, followed by any getting those dashboards set up, the audience and behavior ones, although I believe they want to do a shared session for that, if I recall correctly. So yeah, from our perspective, that's our biggest thing. I've already got out the empty state into review, which I've shared with Axel for initial review. Axel, I know you've picked up the tracking codes, which is now ready to go, and I am working on the stack creation screen now. So we're going to make decent progress, but there will be leftovers for going through to the next milestone.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I think that's, I think like overall we've made good progress, and I think it's totally understandable why some of those items may slip. And luckily it's not our top priority, which is the, building those dashboards. So I think we're in a good space still there. So that's nice. Any other things that anyone would like to mention there? I can't think of anything.
Oh, that is one thing. It's not something we are doing, it's something Dennis is handling. But we've got the English words, Rob, speak. The internal handbook, MR, that I wrote ages ago got merged without testing. We were asking what we need to do to get it merged, and it just got merged. Not a particular problem, but it does. In the time that I wrote it and it got merged, they'd moved the Doxy theme out of the repo. So I added a theme hook into the repo, and the theme no longer existed there, so it didn't work. So we Dennis went and created separate issues, one to remove that from the handbook, and two to add it to the right location. But there is now an ongoing discussion, which if I can find I will link in the document, to bumping the handbook version number. I don't know if it's properly deployed as a result. It might be deployed. I thought it was deployed, but but there's still an ongoing debate around cookies and stuff that people are pushing back on in internal handbook. I will link to it for everyone else to be aware. But be aware that Dennis might need additional help or assistance on that if it doesn't get resolved this week.
Cool. Thanks for raising that. I think that's valuable to know. Yeah, and then some ideas and action items for improvements in the following milestone. Open question that I have that I thought would be cool to hear some perspectives on this, is because it's something that I'm also like, I wouldn't say struggling, but still figuring out like how to balance our high standards for code quality that we have at GitLab for the application overall versus specifically what level of quality do we need for alpha releases, that especially for features, let's say, that are never going to be customer facing, or is understood that are going to have multiple iterations before they become a customer facing, like the query or /widget designer name TBD is one of those examples. So Rob, you had a response to that.
Yeah, just a general feeling that we're starting to move away from the sort of get out quick phase where you just need to get things out into a more sort of into the more starting to think about the next step after that into internal preview and thinking about polish. Not necessarily at the point where everything needs to be done and dusted and 100% foolproof, but we also need to be aware that we shouldn't be adding unnecessary either UX, technical, or other kind of DX, any kind of technical debt if we don't need to. I think I'm sort of leaning it. Axel wouldn't know really much about this, but do you remember the first compliance dashboard we did, Jan? And
I mean, it's a vague memory, but it's been a while, but I do remember it.
it was
I mean, we basically threw it in the trash.
It was functional in a way, but not you. But the user experience wasn't great, and it didn't really help much with what the persona was looking to do with that screen. So I'm starting to think along those kind of lines. Is this doing? Are we reaching the goals that we're looking to reach with each iteration? Is the iteration progressing it forward in a positive step? Yeah, I'm waffling now.
Cool. I have some thoughts on that, but I would first like to also hear Axel's response on that.
Yeah, sure. So from my side, I consider that we have been able to keep a good balance on this. And I'm saying this also because what Rob said, that we are starting to get a bit away from that, from the priority on speed that we did have before. And it was pretty apparent, in which basically we were trying to move away from the POC as fast as we could and ship something. And I, for example, and Rob can remember this, that when he joined, what I told him was, hey, I might need help to push forward this to actually got it merged. And I'm talking about the first base for the dashboard. And that was because I was a bit concerned about the feedback that I was going to get with that, and I wanted to move quickly, but I also wanted to do it right. So that's why I asked for Rob's support. And since that point, we have been, I believe, I consider that we have been building things in a presentable way with a good deal of quality. But I mean, what Gian says resonates a lot with me, because I do believe that in some situations we are still like trying to be really stable when we might just move forward because we are behind a feature flag, and this is not customer facing still. But again, this for me has been like not that significant, because I believe we are doing a good job on that. But yeah, now the thing is that now we do know, and our vision for the work that we are doing is more clear. At least for me, is the night and day in difference. So I do believe that in like the next step we are taking right now are balance. Again, I'm going to be that's the main thing that I wanted to say, that I do feel that we have a good balance. But yeah, Gian, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I feel like overall we do a good job, and I feel like we also err on the side of like quality, which is a good thing to do. And I think like as engineers, that is what we want. Like we want good code, stable code, something that's readable, maintainable. We don't want to go back and throw it in the trash. Like the compliance dashboard, for example, you know, even though like the code itself was actually great, like you said, Rob, the business value of it was questionable, and it was essentially just an experiment to see like what can we do and what do we need to still build to actually, you know, create something usable. That said, I do have like sympathy for products wanting us to, or like the eyes that are on our group to want to see like a quick progress, because we're now getting at that stage where it would be great if we can have that internal preview ready and basically show, hey, this is what we're thinking of building, but everything is still alpha, it's subject to change. This isn't like production quality. And for me, like those are like two different sides of like two sensible things that I can understand from both sides. And I can also see through time how that like bar we have, like in my mind, it's almost like a percentage chart, like a bar chart, where at the start we're say focused on like 80% speed, 20% quality, and now we're shifting it over. But I do wonder, like with each milestone, I feel like we need to worry more and more and more about the quality of it and less about the speed. But for experiments, do we throw that away? For example, like with widget designer, should we just merge, an experiment in and be like, we're probably going to redo this entire thing, or do we aim for quality code? And this is kind of like a conundrum, because I feel like I'm not certain if it's going to be more work, for example, to rebuild a MVC of the query designer, or if it's going to be more work to release a quality product right now. Rob, I can see you're rearing to go with some thoughts on that.
I agree with everyone else's sentiment. I think we've been striking a nice balance. There's been a minor tension in all of our discussions around, should we be doing this fast, or should we doing really thinking deeply around each element that we've been building, which is good. That means that we are thinking about the quality as well as the our group's goals, and that tension of time, as Jan pointed out. So as long as we're keeping that in the back of our minds at all the time, and even if that does cause a bit of tension, that's always a good thing. That's never wrong or bad. On the specific point about query designer, we've not done any kind of user experience conversation, discussion, debate. Product's not even thought about in any intrinsic detail on a persona level and how it's going to work. It is very much right now can we do this experiment that's sort of being morphed into something that might end up in the product, but again, it's not yet had that thought process put behind it. So I would argue that in terms of any area that we're experimenting in, and that includes things like sessions, like what Dennis and Max have been doing with the session schema data and all that stuff. It's around functionally. Is the code of high quality? Would we want to continue using that code in future? And is it bug/security compliant? Following all our best practices. From a UI point of view, I'm a bit more loose there. If something is blatantly sort of off, then I would question it or raise it as a improvement, and so they can always push back and say no, we'll do it later or whatever it might be. Have that discussion. But I would, from a UI point of view, we're going to have to wipe it clean and start again because we've not had any kind of discussion around it. But it doesn't mean that we have to get rid of all the functionality and the code behind it necessarily.
Yeah, I feel like there's additional tensions for me, specifically on stuff like the query designer or adding like these large features or pieces of code, where on the one hand I'm very pro, let's push experiments and let's use it and let's figure out what is the value, what is it that we want to use, is this usable, is this something that we want to go forward on. On the other hand, there's the pull on like, because we're adding it to GitLab's main code base, it isn't like the dev kit where, it's much safer to experiment there. Because I feel like it's safer in the sense that there isn't a cost to some other group coming and like reusing our code. And GitLab's code meshes very quickly, where even in our own group, we start, we're aware of what the others are writing, and we reuse as much as possible. And that's great, but it also means like if we had to pull something out or redo it, the cost of that raises. And I'm especially aware of the fact that like we're going to have groups like Optimize also come on board and start reusing some of our code. So I really want us, or I'm starting to think, and it would be cool if like I think everyone starts to think about like a framework for how we define, or like marking a file as saying like, this is an experiment, please don't reuse anything here, or like starting to add comments, or adding some system where we can both deliver stuff that is customer ready and also do experiments and have our cake and eat it, kind of have it both ways. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a good call. I totally see where are you coming from. Although I do believe we might not be at risk of actually like putting a technical debt to if that's what we're talking about. Yeah, and especially with is the query the query designer the next big thing we have in yeah, you know, or are we going to have like more
No, it's definitely, it's the next big experiment, I guess, but it's not planned for release.
The next big thing is funnels and funnel data visualization of funnels and funnel analysis. Query designer is like 5-6 milestones out from a sort of development on our side perspective. Tim has just found it really useful to get going on this to help with visualizations, proving what we can do, and also building dashboards and seeing that functionality.
Yes. Yeah, but no, this is something we have to. I mean, I consider that is good that we are talking about it now. But yeah.
So I've linked to the widget designer. It's adding almost 1,800 lines of code. It's taken me a while to review, but I
genuinely would ask this to be broken out into smaller components.
Yeah, it has already been. And even then, there's also additional cognitive load to it. Like the smaller you make it, the more difficult it becomes to actually do like integration tests basically on it. But I do think this raises like a question for me, like how can we better push stuff like this in a very work in progress state? Because I think that's fine, and then keep it isolated and keep our technical debt low for that. And I think for me, it's like the question is, should we even do that? And how can we do that?
This sounds like and feels like an RFC to me. This feels like we need to come up with I mean, we can push it, but it feels like we need a convention that the whole front end would get behind, because we're going to have to do some kind of annotation, because there's a lot of files here. It's not like just one entry point and then everything cascades out of it necessarily. There's view shared, there's changes to customizable dashboard, which is a different problem because that is going to be shared with Optimize and other groups that want to use customizations. So yeah, I know we're not picking on Career Designer, but we're using it as an example of the type of scenarios we're going to face. And it's not just going to be this. We have other things that nobody else has done so far in our code base around analytical data structure and analysis that we're going to have to experiment on. I think, yeah, half the problem here is we don't have a description of what the Career Designer is supposed to be to help make that decision and that choice too, which makes it even harder to pick what should or shouldn't be happening at any given point from a product point of view.
Yeah, thanks for letting me like pick your brains here, because this is like really an early question, and I was just trying to explore what is it that your thoughts are on, is this a common problem? And I do think like the right vehicle to take this forward, and thanks for mentioning it, Rob, is like an RFC and talking to like the maintainers group and then the full front-end group, and seeing what like the consensus is on this approach. And maybe we even have one already that I'm not aware of, because I mean we're not the only greenfields group at GitLab. Anyway,
I mean the VS Code IDE thing, for instance, is the most recent thing. That was a massive job that they've only just starting to finish off.
So I don't want to take more of our allotted time because I see we're already close to the end, and I don't want to, or I want to leave some time for praises. So please go ahead.
Yeah. Just before we get to praises, just a read only, more or less reminder to add your holiday allocation, not holiday allocation, but your percentage of, I can't type English. Enter. No, that is not my cursor. Where is my cursor? Thank you. Ignore me. Right. Colonian, update your availability in the 15.8 milestone. Obviously, I'm expecting us all to be off at some point, all combined. But just so we've got an idea if we need to push anything out of the 15.8 milestone, be good to make sure that we all know where we're going to be. Like, I'm not going to be here for the majority of it. I've got like 5 days worth of work and then I'm gone. So just thought I'd raise that. In terms of praises, I thought I would say a thank you to Jan for providing that piece of feedback on my maintainer review I gave him. I made a non-blocking suggestion, and I wasn't very clear around being more when it started to get a bit more into the sort of blocking final decision phase for me. But it was great for him to give me that feedback and allow me to be aware of other people's perceptions to help me make myself a lot more clearer as a reviewer. And yeah, it was I'm not gonna lie, it put me back a bit for a couple of days while I processed it, but that is because I am not a neurotypical individual. But it was for the better. So thank you.
Yeah, and from my side, to make it concise, I take a look at all of the reviews we do, even the ones that are not for my MRs, and it has been really educational for me. So thank you so much, Yuvat, for being good reviewers overall. And yeah, Jan, go ahead.
Sorry, I can't multitask. What I would like to say, first of all, Rob, is thanks for taking the feedback. I feel like you took it very well, and I like that we could discuss it. And yeah, also thanks for putting in the thought about like what being the advocate for our users. I think that is something important that every team needs, and ideally everyone in the team is, but especially as you are basically the main custodian of the UX role, which hopefully we can get a permanent hire soon for that. I do appreciate that you are championing like the user's cause and especially focusing on our UX. And I think that is not something that you should stray from at all. So yeah, don't mistake my feedback on the feedback for we shouldn't do this. It's yeah, just like the blocking versus non-blocking. Then I would like to say thank you both for the efforts you put in this milestone. I feel like we've made a lot of progress. I know we didn't manage to get everything done, but I feel like if you look at all the MRs merged, all the like stuff that we've unblocked, it's amazing work. Then I also want to call out like something awesome that I saw is thank you both for the amazing code suggestions that you made on the Cube Analytics library with regards to making things more usable, exporting it, thinking about different parsers, how we evolve that. It's really given me a lot of food for thought in terms of how we take this forward, how we use it for different libraries, and I think it's made our architecture all that much better. So yeah, awesome work there. Right. Unless anyone has any last minute items, I think we're good to say goodbye.